Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously fascinating, sensory-rich journey. We're looking at how a simple wooden barrel acts as an active, transformative ingredient in fine winemaking. It's literally the magic of oak. And we're going to follow its incredible path all the way from a towering tree in the forest right down to the glass sitting on your dinner table. Let's get into it.
Now, you might be wondering, how in the world did a basic, utilitarian Roman shipping container become the single most crucial element in fine wine? Honestly, it was essentially history's greatest happy accident. Originally, the Romans just needed something, well, sturdier than fragile clay amphorae to transport their goods across the empire. They weren't looking for flavor enhancement at all. They just really didn't want their wine spilling all over those bumpy cobblestone roads.
So looking at the timeline, in ancient Rome, the barrel was purely a logistical solution for transport. Minimal flavor impact was actually the goal. Fast forward to the Middle Ages, and the barrel simply becomes the absolute standard vessel for storage and trade. But once we hit the modern era, the entire paradigm shifts. We finally develop this modern understanding that the wood isn't just some inert container holding liquid. It actively adds to the wine. It brings these incredible notes of vanilla, spice, and toast, completely altering the profile of what's inside.
Section 1. Anatomy of winemaking oak.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the actual anatomy of the wood grain dramatically dictates your final wine. On one hand, we have fine grain. This comes from trees with very, very slow growth. Because the tree grows so slowly, the wood is tight, it's dense, and it's much less porous. This imparts super subtle, elegant flavors, giving the winemaker really precise control over the aging process. On the flip side, coarse grain comes from fast-growing trees. This wood is a lot more open and porous, which allows for a greater oxygen exchange. That hits the wine with much stronger, bolder flavors. We're talking big punches of vanilla, coconut, and spice.
Section 2. Crafting the perfect barrel.
Now, the structural stakes of actually cutting this wood are incredibly high. To build the barrel maker, or cooper, essentially has two choices. A split cut follows the natural radial grain of the wood. This is stronger, it's highly stable, and it ensures virtually zero leakage. It's absolutely the premium, high-quality choice. Alternatively, a saw cut just makes parallel cuts straight through the wood. Sure, it's a lot cheaper to produce, but it totally ignores the natural grain. That leads to a much higher risk of deformation and literally every winemaker's absolute worst nightmare, leaks in the cellar. So once the wood is perfectly cut, it has to be dried. And the method they choose here matters immensely. Natural air dry means leaving the wood stacked outdoors, right in the elements, for 2 to 3 years. It's a pretty remarkable process where this outdoor exposure allows natural fungal activity to modify the wood. It reduces that harsh bitterness and builds incredible aromatic complexity, really bringing out those rich vanilla, clove, and coconut aromas. On the other hand, artificial kiln drying just throws the wood into controlled ovens for a few weeks. It is exponentially faster, for sure, but it leaves you with wood that has way fewer aromatic compounds and is significantly more tannic and bitter. Section 3. French versus American oak. And this brilliantly illustrates the big showdown. French oak, sourced from legendary regions like Allier, Tronchet, and Vosges, is really built for a nuanced aging process. With its fine grain and firm tannins, it delivers very elegant, subtle aromas of clove and spice. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, American oak acts as a total aromatic powerhouse. It generally features a coarser grain and lower tannins, resulting in softer wines with a profile that heavily leans into sweet coconut and vanilla. Plus, as an added bonus, it's generally more economical to produce. Ultimately, picking between these two is a massive stylistic choice that completely shapes the wine's identity.
Section 4. The science of wine aging.
Let's get into the chemistry of it all. Through a process called micro-oxygenation, the barrel essentially breathes. This slow, highly controlled exchange of oxygen through the tiny pores of the wood is exactly what softens those harsh, astringent tannins in young wine. It's what chemically stabilizes the liquid for long-term aging.
And the wine isn't just sitting there. It's actively extracting physical compounds directly from the toasted wood. It pulls out aromatic compounds like vanillin and lactones, which is exactly what gives us those classic vanilla and coconut profiles. It extracts wood tannins, adding a really firm structural backbone. And it even draws out polysaccharides, which physically alter the actual texture and weight of the liquid itself. Now, what's really interesting about this is how oak impacts whites versus reds in distinctly different ways. In dry white wines, barrel fermentation and aging certainly add lovely notes of vanilla and toast. But more importantly, they create a creamier texture and a softer, rounder acidity that just beautifully coats the palate. For red wines, the impact is heavily structural. The wood tannins create a smoother overall structure, a much fuller mouthfeel, and they integrate the fruit and wood flavors while really enhancing the wine's clarity and stability.
So the crucial point here is that the ultimate goal of this entire process is balance. Despite all this incredible science and chemistry at their fingertips, a winemaker's absolute hardest job is to avoid overpowering the wine with oak flavors. The objective is to achieve a delicate, perfect harmony between the fresh fruit of the grape and the deep, complex influence of the wood. It should be a beautiful partnership, not a hostile takeover by the barrel.
So, what does this all mean for you? Well, next time you pour a glass of fine wine, will you be able to spot the subtle signatures of the oak? When you take a sip, will you notice that creamier texture in your white wine? Will you pick up on the bold, sweet coconut of American oak, or maybe the subtle, elegant clove of a French forest? The history, the meticulous craftsmanship, and the fascinating science are all right there in your glass, just waiting to be actively tasted. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy tasting!